it's the problem is when you're a freshman, you can cloud a good inning with freshman moves, and that's kind of what's happened with some of these guys with some walks and a good inning kind of gets away with them. Freshmen always tend to have trouble closing out innings, and that's kind of what's happened. But
that's exactly what happened with Nate Britton earlier. Remember, retired the first two hitters he saw, then walked the bases loaded and allowed a run. But otherwise,
pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
So yeah, I mean, I like what I see. Hopefully you like them a lot more here in 2 or 3 months when they get to develop and kind of find their footing at this level.
Well, and the benefit here too is that Coach Checketts for the Gauchos has not sent a pitch hitter to the plate yet in this game, which means that all of these freshmen are getting first team reps against a very, very good offensive lineup.
Well, and to kind of counter and match your point, we saw Coach Hare go to a ton of pinch hitters, and it tells you one of two things: either he's ticked at the guys playing, or the guys that are behind them are right on their heels for that position. Because early in the season, you want guys to get consistent at bats, especially if they're seeing the baseball well or not, right? You want them to continue seeing it and kind of settle in. And I mean, we're seeing 4 or 5 plus pinch hitters in the Campbell lineup. So interesting take on both sides, and maybe a wake-up call for some of the Campbell hitters that get your act together, get out of the game. So,
and the goal, of course, to have a lineup with good experience and playing the way that Coach Hare wants them to play by the time they get to conference play when they open up in the Colonial. And we were opining about the move to the Colonial earlier as Reese Calvin takes that one right in the lower back, which never feels good. So he'll head down to first after the hit by pitch from Vargo as we take a look back at that one a moment ago.
Yeah, this is just a tug from Vargo, trying to do a little bit too much.
Yeah, that just never feels good.
No, I mean, it hit him in a good spot, though. I mean, if you're going to be a little picky, that's one of the better spots.
Yeah, a little bit lower than the lower back.
You get one in the ribs, the shoulder.
Yeah, off the ankle, the heel or something like that.
There's some places where it's definitely worse. It's never great, but there's some bad options there.
Yeah. So again, we were talking about the move to the Colonial and the opportunities that it presents for the Camels, and one of those, you were hitting on it before, neither school seems to want to admit it, but Wilmington and Campbell have long been competitors over in recruiting especially, have played traditionally in midweek matchups in the non-conference, but it's going to be a bit of a different animal this year when you have that initial series between these two over the course of a weekend with real stakes versus a Tuesday night in April.
Right. I mean, to be honest, you're not gonna win any recruits winning a Tuesday game. Like, recruits just, they don't care about that. And so, Campbell's won some recruits, in regionals and such, but Wilmington's it's a big draw. It's at the beach. It's a historically good program, year in and year out. And so, when you start facing a team for 3-game sets, and you've got a guy that is taking visits to Campbell and Wilmington, it's like, well, hey man, look back at the past couple of years, and we're taking series from them, and we're finishing higher in conference. No matter who does it, and that's what's going to win that guy that you're both recruiting. And typically, I mean, those are two of the premier programs kind of in the area baseball wise, and
that's below the ACC level, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to go play good, mid-major baseball, and there's
it's Campbell, it's Wilmington, and it's Coastal. I mean, those are the three. Occasionally, you'll see Greensboro pop up and have a good season. They made the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago, but yeah, it's those three primarily.
Yeah, and Campbell and Wilmington, have a different pitch to some of these guys. Come to Campbell, you'll be able to play your first year, or maybe you play your second year, or you go to state, or whoever. And maybe you have to sit for 2 years or 3 years, and so I mean, they're very similar, in recruitment wise, and when you start beating them in conference play and finishing higher than them, that's a winning argument for a recruit.
And then to kind of build on that, there's another premier program in this conference, back in my neck of the woods.
That's right.
In the Huskies of Northeastern, and when you have multiple series like that in conference play, where high leverage games, conference titles at stake, a lot of intensity, I think back to the season-ending series last year against Upstate, where the conference title was at stake, all Campbell had to do was win one game, and that series would have been moved from that point on. But you lose one, you lose the second one, and then all of a sudden, then it feels like a big time, conference matchup in that third game on that Sunday. Now you're going to get that a lot over the course of the next few years, playing against some of these high leverage programs or high profile programs. That's got to be able to prepare you not only for conference tournament play, but for potentially NCAA tournament play as well.
I mean, that's exactly the point. I think that's one of the main selling points in making the move is, to be honest, I mean, I played in the Big South, and I've called a lot of Big South baseball, and to be honest, it got to the point where it was out of hand. It wasn't competitive.
There was simply no other Big South team that could put even half the lineup together
No.
that Campbell did last year.
No, I mean, Upstate was a good program, and maybe you had one other decent program, but it was never more than a 3-horse race in the conference, and the other teams were not, didn't have the budget, were not up to speed to compete with Campbell. And you go to the CAA, and you've got schools. I mean, we haven't even mentioned College of Charleston and some of these other places that are.
Charleston spent a lot of time in the NCAA tournament over the years.
I mean, great baseball programs. Good breaking ball there.
Breaking ball that time from Fargo.
Strikeout, and playing quality baseball, but I think it's twofold because one, you get to play quality baseball week in and week out, and
take a look back at this breaking ball real quick by Fargo. Whew, that absolutely pulled
yeah,
foul with that
that's
one.
a good pitch. Started on the hands, broke over the plate. But two, I kind of mentioned it earlier, is Campbell doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to go 21-0 in conference in order to be semi-respected on a national scale, and I think that'll take some of that pressure off of unhealthy pressure off of every pitch that they play throughout the season.
Yeah, the opportunity to play your way into the NCAA tournament as an at-large certainly would be huge. And then, to your point, it takes some of the pressure off of those midweek games also, because Coach Hare not shy about scheduling big time in the non-conference. We're going to see it again this year. A couple of games against ECU. They'll see Coastal again. But then those ACC programs come calling as well. They've got games on the road against NC State, Duke this year as well. That's a big time schedule. And now, if you play well in conference, pick off a few of those midweek games, you still have an opportunity potentially to play your way into the NCAA tournament. And that's notwithstanding what's happening in front of us here, where you're playing the top 20 team as well.
Yeah, I mean, it gives them so much more opportunity, and it allows them to, at times they were just burning out midweek, playing 2 games against top 20 teams, and and then you have 3 more games on the weekend that you can't lose one of.
Right.
And I think it's an unfair ask. I mean,
it doesn't mean you can go 10-10 in conference play
right.
and still feel good about your spot. You still need to win those games. But to your point, you don't need to win 90% of them.
Yeah,
to feel like you have a shot if you were happen to lose in the conference tournament.
Yeah, this is baseball, right? I mean, you're going to drop some, but to not be able to drop one. I mean, I remember, Campbell would play teams where if they won, they would still lose RPI points, and
that happened last year.
Yeah,
and it might have been part of the reason they didn't end up hosting a regional.
I mean, how tough is it? How do you tell a player, like, no matter what, your standing will be devalued, even if you go out and you do your job? It's a tough sell, and so I think it's a fabulous move. I think the CAA has a ton of great opportunity, and I'm excited to see how it shakes out this year.
Terrific opportunity for the Camels. Moving into the CAA. And then we'll kind of build on this and also talk a little bit about the program as it stands now from when you started here. We were joking about it earlier. You guys were changing across the street when you started as a freshman. Now you have this beautifully remodeled facility here that has, become kind of a symbol for mid-major baseball. Terrific play by Stallman, doubles him off at first. Again, more of the outstanding glove work by Reed Stallman at first. Doubling off Xander Darby. And that is the end of the inning, and we now move to the bottom half of the 7th.